Batmobile, Dave. This is one of the most iconic cars of all time, and for me, the most iconic Batmobile, certainly.
Even though the Adam West Batman hasn't been on the air in 40 years, people still recognize this Batmobile. I would argue anyone that this is the most famous and the most recognized car ever built.
That is true. Hey, slow down a little bit, dude.
This thing has a Ford 390 big block in it. It's a little hard to just go slow. Oh, great. This is where we get pulled over.
Go save some people,
Let's
man.
go find a damsel in
Let's
distress.
go fight some crime, man.
Atomic batteries to speed.
Wait,
Atomic batteries to power.
turbines to speed.
Let's go.
Dave, stop the car. There's trouble afoot.
Dude, get back here. Where are you going?
As cars are long forgotten and legends fade, three men have made it their life's work to recover, rebuild, and restore automotive history. Tonight,
There it is.
one of Hollywood's most iconic cars you've never heard of,
This has got to be one of the wildest trucks ever built.
rescued from obscurity and given its 15 minutes of fame.
Oh my God!
Then, holy carburetor, Batman, the Galpin team works on the ultimate superhero ride.
Now it's looking like the Batmobile.
And some of TV's most recognizable cars and automotive designers are ready for their close-up.
We didn't care how he stopped as long as we went.
The Batmobile turns a lot of heads. And how is it we got our hands on such an iconic car? Well, it all started earlier when we paid a visit to the home of the King of Customs. Man, I always loved coming here.
They repainted the windows.
We're in North Hollywood at Barris Customs, and there is no bigger name in custom cars than Barris. Be good to see Joji. To me, we're really sitting in hallowed ground. I always love being here, man. Always find something new.
It's like coming home. I miss seeing George sit there, though.
I know, right? We were very lucky to have a wonderful relationship with George. George was one of the biggest influences in my life. He was my mentor. We even built a car together.
It's got to be debonair. It's got to be classy. It's got to have the pearls.
Yeah.
He loved his toys.
Yeah, so do I. That's why I like coming here so much. The legend of George Barris goes all the way back to the late 1940s. George got his start by helping his brother Sam customize a 49 Mercury in their garage. That build inspired one of the most iconic hot rods in history, their 1951 Hero Hata Merc. You can actually go see it at the Peterson Automotive Museum. So how do you top that? You go Hollywood. George was influential in the street racing youth culture of Los Angeles in the late 40s, and Tinseltown wanted in on the craze. So they hired him to bring that culture to the screen, giving him extensive celebrity clientele and the opportunity to build some cars that you may have heard of. The Munsters Coach, the Beverly Hillbillies Jalopy, Kit from Knight Rider, which earned him widespread recognition as the pioneer of custom design cars.
Whoa!
Hey,
Galpin's in the
Georgie.
house. Hey!
Oh, how
Good
are
to see you.
So good
Oh,
to see
you
you
brought
too.
this problem person.
Yeah, well,
Oh.
had to bring Dave.
My name is Joji Barris Pastor. I'm the daughter of the king of the customizers, George Barris. Well, come on in here. This is George's private office. This is where he would sit down and actually have the conversations with his various clients.
George Barris was the first person who recognized that you could take a car and make it a leading character in a movie or a TV show. He saw opportunities that nobody else seen.
Look what we got. Red Foxx record.
Yeah. Today, I'm excited that Joji asked us here to see a piece of TV and automotive history that not many people know existed. Look at how amazing this is.
Oh my God.
All right, I love all these pictures, but let's see the truck.
Yeah. Dave, enough with the pictures. Come on. Well, look at this.
There it is. Wow. It's just so cool.
Nice.
How kooky and wild is this?
This has got to be one of the wildest trucks ever built, right? In 1974, George Barris got a proposition from legendary comedian Red Foxx to design a customized tow truck to be featured in his hit television show, Sanford and Son. The NBC sitcom, known for its edgy humor, had reached #2 in the ratings in its time slot, and a planned storyline had Red Fox's character winning the lottery. And who better to build a shiny new shop truck that Sanford spends his winnings on than the king of Hollywood customs? Preferring to work smarter and not harder, Barris had an ace up his sleeve. The designer he worked with, Ed Newton, had built a one-of-a-kind tow truck with an almost cartoonish design called the Turnpike Hauler, and was willing to let Barris use it as the basis for the new truck, the Little Red Wrecker. Barris used the Head Start to focus on modifications that made the already funky Wrecker even more closely match Red Fox's famously cantankerous personality. But unfortunately, it never got the spotlight it deserved.
So the show got canceled before this could actually make it on air. So it never actually got to fulfill its destiny and be on TV or anything.
It needs to go back to the way my dad had it. Dave is the one that can do it.
It definitely needs a lot of work, but the bones are here.
Since George built this car, it's changed hands a bunch of times. And as trends changed in the 80s and 90s, so did the Wrecker. The paint's not the right color, it's got the wrong engine, and the upholstery is stuck in an 80s nightmare. But luckily, the Wrecker was acquired from a guy named Junior who got it at auction. And Joji wants to restore it to her father's original design. And of course, Dave and I are anxious to help. And not just because we have a personal connection with him.
Saving Barris history is saving custom car history, because he is the history. I remember the first time that I met him, I was with my dad. I'm like, hey, Dad, there's George Barris. And it was so funny, because my dad just gets up and he goes, hey, George. And I'm like, no idea that my dad actually knew George Barris. He's like, hey, Bert.
Beau and I both knew George before we actually knew each other. So in a way, he kind of brought us together. I mean, just thinking back to so many car shows with him, hanging out in Detroit, Tulsa, Sacramento.
Oh my gosh. It's so great when Dave and Beau come by, because it's just good times, good feelings, good memories. I get emotional. Because it brings them to this happy place. It means a lot to me that you would be overseeing. These cars are very special. They can't just be taken anywhere. They have to go to people.
One.
Yeah, you know, I want it restored back to his style.
Yep, well, I'm anxious to get started. Are we gonna tow something with it?
Oh, no, wait, I got something else, though. Come on, let's go over here. There you go.
Yeah.
Getting to see the Batmobile never gets old. So Dave and I jumped at the chance to bring it back to the way it looked for the show back in the 60s. It's an honor for Galpin to be entrusted with not just one, but 2 Barris projects. The first, the most famous show car of all time that helped bring our childhood comics to life. And the other, a total unknown. But when we're done with it, we're gonna give it the Hollywood premiere that it deserved and that George wanted 40 years ago.
Get in, let's go.
Awesome. Hope the Batmobile doesn't mind sharing the spotlight.
Sanford and Son?
Yeah.
I love that show. Joji had this?
Yeah. I mean, how cool is it? Not only going to work on a Barris custom, but a Barris custom truck. I mean, you really don't see many of these.
Man, I remember Sanford and Son. I knew that show was going to be a hit the moment I heard that theme song. I'd play it for you right now, but we'd probably get sued, so here's something similar. Quincy Jones composed it to sound just like Red Fox's character Sanford looked. A junkyard dealer with street smarts and an attitude. I kind of get the same feeling when I look at this truck.
My favorite part of this whole wacky thing is the fact that you actually look through the roof when you're driving. That's so bitchin'.
I love that. Well, obviously, a lot of things are missing, so we got our work cut out for us.
Yeah, especially since it's missing a Hemi.
It had a Hemi?
Had an early Hemi in it, 392.
And that would have been like the first thing they would have taken out, right?
That was more valuable than the truck was after this had been shown for a year, so of course that was the first thing they yanked.
So what are we gonna do to it?
Well, we're gonna take it back to the way it was in '74. When he presented this to the production company that was doing Sanford and Son. We have to find all the original, the right wheels, period correct tires, rebuild these old ass brakes that they haven't made in 50 years, find the original style Hemi and put that in there. Finding a Hemi to put in this is the least of our worries. As Red Foxx liked to say, beauty may be skin deep, but ugly goes clear to the bone.
We've got to redo this entire interior. So it had a completely different setup. The steering wheel was different.
I mean, the seats are missing, so I guess we have to rebuild that.
This doesn't get a seat. Remember a sit and spin?
Mm-hmm.
It's a square version of that.
Oh. Did the paint look like this back then?
It was different. I think this goes back to an ice blue frame with ice blue upholstery and candy red everything else.
So you don't like the button tough interior here?
I mean, it just reminds me of like every strip club I've ever been in since I was a kid.
I don't think me and Dave frequent the same kind of clubs. Are these the only parts we got?
Yeah, man, that's all that came with it.
So this all formed the towing mechanism, right? This is the waviest chrome I've ever seen in my life.
Really?
When it comes to the original towing assembly, we got off easy because Joji gave us all the original parts and they just need to be re-chromed. But we do have a much bigger challenge in restoring this wrecker. And that's to figure out what was part of Barris's original design and what's been done in the years since, because really only one person's vision matters. And luckily, Joji gave us all of George's pictures, which will serve as a great reference.
There's been a lot of work done to it since 1974.
That's exactly right. And now it's time to make it Barris's again. You know, George was part of all of our lives, you know, individually. We all came from very different backgrounds, different car cultures, and at the same time, he touched all of our lives, you know?
I miss that old dude.
Yeah, he was the king.
We got to do this in George's honor. We got to give the records 15 minutes of fame. You know, it's coming out party. George would have wanted.
Yeah, and that's what Joji wants too, right?
Yeah, we got to do it right for George. Let me see what other Hollywood cars I can round up.
Coming up on Car Kings, we get this TV legend ready for prime time.
Now it's looking like the Batmobile.
And later,
All this moves, this goes away.
will the Lil Red Wrecker find the spotlight?
Trying to make the best out of a situation. So, John, Little Red Wrecker.
I see that. That's awesome.
I think, Mike, the first thing I wanted you to dig into is the instrument panel. We'll get that out. Steering wheel, shifter, and we need to figure out if the steering column is attached to the cab or the chassis, because I gotta tilt this up to take the cab off. Once we get the cabin box off, then we can pull the engine and trans. Then we'll use the mock-up Hemi to create all the engine mounts and trans mounts, because the other one isn't here yet. John, you wanna grab that jump box? But first, we gotta get power to the hydraulics so we can tilt the cab up and get it out of the way. Super sketchy, but what's the worst that could happen? Looks like the steering column stays. So the cab has to be lifted over the column. Yeah.
We got some soft straps. We should put something over it just so it doesn't come down on Mike.
It'll be all right. It's not the first time I get hit in the head. That was a great idea. Look at that. Just pops right out.
Y'all ready? We're gonna pick this up and we're gonna push the truck out from underneath it.
That's good.
Moving out. All right.
When you tear down a car, it exposes all the little secrets that only the original builders would know. Sometimes the things you find when you start peeling back the layers can really come in handy. But more often than not, they expose all the stuff the builder didn't want you to see.
Of course. Grab a rag.
And just like Barris's original plan was derailed by Sanford and Son's cancellation,
This is the custom car equivalent of sweeping it under the rug.
this teardown brings its own share of surprises. Oh. Now I see it. This thing was center steer, so not only do we have to rebuild the seating situation, but now we have to re-engineer the steering mount, steering column, and all that. Thanks to the Barris archive, I was able to figure out that even though these pictures are taken at a weird angle, sometime between then and now, the steering had actually been moved from center over to the side on the wrecker. So now this has to go back there where Barris had it. But the real work's gonna be over here. I mean, I've got to redo this whole floor, put everything back in the middle, put the pedals on each side, and then I got to build this whole platform for the driver to sit on that kind of comes off this back panel and floats around the steering column. It's gonna be interesting trying to build all this from photos. It's gonna be a load of work. Finally, a chance to put the original size tires on this thing.
This has back grease on it.
At some point over the last 40 years, the Batmobile lost its original Raider wheels and tires. More than likely, they were swapped out with whatever was popular at the time. In this case, it was smaller BFGs and Krager wheels. So for 25 years, I've been trying to get George to let me change the tires out on the Batmobile. Careful of the car, sir.
Batman speaking. Warning all of you to brace yourselves.
Although Batman films date back to the 40s, the first Batmobile that everybody remembers is this one from the mid-60s Adam West series. It started its life as a one-of-a-kind 1955 Lincoln Futura concept car. But because the prototype was slated to be crushed, Barris was able to buy it for only $1. Barris was tasked with building a Batmobile for the new TV series, and he only had a few weeks to pull this off, so the Futura design gave him a huge head start. $30,000 and a whole bunch of work later, including a jet engine made out of a 5-gallon paint can, the Batmobile was born. Eventually, there were 3 replicas made to make filming easier, and one of those is the one I'm working on.
Here it comes. Listen to that reaction.
But in 2013, the #1 Batmobile sold at Barrett-Jackson for a record $4.6 million.
Thanks to all of you out there. You made our car world famous.
When Joji asked me to do some work on this thing, just throw him over there. I called my buddy Rich in New Jersey, had him send me a set of the right wheels that are supposed to be on this car. And then we got Coker to give us the right size tires that are supposed to be on it. So now it's gonna look exactly like it did in 1966, wheels, tires, and all. Now it's looking like the Batmobile, right?
All right. Put this on the scanner, make sure it's straight, and scan. The old bat symbol center caps don't match up to the new wheels Dave and John put on, so I'm making new ones. And what it's doing is it's taking a picture, digitizing it, and then the only thing I have to do is trace around it, take it to the water jet, and cut it out. And let's go. A water jet, 60,000 pounds of pressure of water, blows through anything up to 1.5 inches of metal. Pretty cool, right? Now Dave just has to paint them. And then the Batmobile will once again be ready to fight crime.
Right. I might be able to sleep tonight now that we have the right wheels on the Batmobile. Oh, Barris would be happy.
Yeah, that's definitely in the way.
All this moves, this goes away.
A lot of work had been done at some point between 1974 and now to mount the Chevy engine in the wrecker. But we're going back to the original Hemi, which is a longer engine. So we're undoing that work and creating new motor mounts to move the engine back. And I'll shorten the existing drive shaft so we can get the engine back out of the way, putting the Hemi back into this thing where it once was.
While John finishes up the motor mounts, I'm gonna check out all these original photos of the wrecker. Here is your gauge pod to find the original placement of the steering. John.
Don't tell me you found another nugget.
No, but I found answers.
What were the questions?
The steering column has a U-joint right at the bottom and it tilts with the cab. Since the steering column is being relocated into the middle of the car and the cab tilts on hydraulics, the steering column has to tilt with it. So now it needs to tilt and be able to move up like this. So I've got this molly tubing, and what I'm thinking about doing is drilling through this for a hardened pin and slotting this on the milling machine so it's still captive this way, but it'll allow for movement in and out. This is a prime example of what happens when people buy something and then make it their own. Trying to make the best out of a situation here.
So we're 9 3/4.
One little. I have to reposition the 90-degree transfer for the steering box to the center position. Then put the cab back on, trying to get this cab put and start figuring out how to build the pedals and all that stuff. There. Brake pedal. Now it's just a matter of building the new floor around the pedals, making an access door for the master cylinder, and around the new center steer. What if I don't fit? I tend to work like a friggin' madman. For me, it's just what I do every single day for minimum 12, 14 hours. Ta-da. Half the floor. Hey, we got any PAs to make a coffee run? I'm gonna be here for a while.
Coming up,
That's amazing.
Beau gets behind the wheel of the wrecker.
Good thing you wear your fancy shoes.
And
New, what do you think?
one of automotive history's most unsung heroes pays a visit.
The object is to make it look like it's moving when it's standing still.
I mean, I can go like that. That doesn't care. Good. That. George Barris was no stranger to the all-nighter, so it's only fair that I pull one to get this whole floor wrapped up on the record. Nice. I like it. Sometimes, if I manage to find the right balance of caffeine and motivation, I can usually get a whole lot of stuff done while everybody else is asleep. Okay. Little fine-tuning, it's there.
Wow, dude.
Hey, buddy.
Do you
Sleep?
do
No,
you sleep? So I guess I'll take the day off today and
No, no, no. We got lots of to do. I was just getting ready to weld the tab on for the brake pedal to get the angle. Beau's coming in like a couple hours. I'd rather have all this stuff nailed and him be able to set in there.
Okay, cool.
Before Beau gets here, I want to button up a few things on the cab. Most importantly, mocking up the pedal placement. So that once he's here, we can confirm that everything's in the right place so he can be as comfortable as possible. Because unlike real cars, he's not going to be able to adjust his seat or the steering wheel to make driving this any easier. Well, there, that works. Okay.
So how's our 70s sitcom mobile coming along? Whoa. Got a lot of work done.
Hey, buddy.
I love how that center steering came together. It really makes the whole front end of the car come together. I love it.
Let's flip this up real quick and show him what it does.
Oh, that's amazing.
Since you're that close, why don't you jump in? It's a good thing you wear your fancy shoes.
Yeah.
Well, this is fairly not really comfortable at all, but wow. I mean, the detail here looks amazing. Now, is that from all the pictures we got from Joji?
Yeah, exactly. I was trying really hard to use the archive photos, but sadly, they're very tiny old photos. So I think it's as close as it can be, given what I had to work with. And this one, you can clearly see the angle of the steering wheel. Yep. And that's all I had to go by for the brake pedal. Can you see it? Here.
There we go. Wow. Okay, now I can see with the brake pedal. That makes sense. As usual, the team is really knocking this thing out of the park. But they better keep that high standard, because I have something big planned for the wrecker. Oh, that steering, that looks exactly right. Well, it's looking good, man.
I thought this would be fun to go zipping around in for today.
Yeah.
No, I didn't take a side job at Uber. This old guy in the passenger seat next to me, he's automotive royalty.
Harkens back to the old days when we didn't care how we stopped as long as we went.
This is legendary artist and custom car designer Ed Newton. Newt came on the scene in the early 60s with all of his crazy designs. He was the artist behind most of the t-shirt monster art for guys like Ed Roth. Roth and other car builders recognized his talent and hired him to draw the concept designs for a lot of their famous cars, including the Turnpike Hauler, the actual car that Barris repurposed into the Little Red Wrecker. Now, this is one of your even more outlandish designs.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of I don't know about this one yet. One of the unfortunate things about working on all these really old cars is that a lot of the people that built them originally are no longer with us. And that, of course, includes George Barris. But Newt saw firsthand both versions, the Turnpike Hauler as it was delivered to George, and the Little Red Wrecker as it was when George finished it. So he's an invaluable resource on this build.
Oh.
Newt, what do you think?
This is quite surprising. Not having seen this for years, I didn't even know where it went. When you see something that you never thought would continue being in existence, then you realize your creation is being appreciated in a second life. When these cars were built, they were never intended to become anything more than a flash in the pan. 2 years, maybe 3 if we were lucky.
Yeah, they had a short lifespan.
The reason why this one had a longer lifespan is because of the hookup with the Red Foxx TV show.
So by transforming the turnpike hauler into the Little Red Wrecker, Barris kind of immortalized it, right?
That makes sense.
You have input for us? Is there stuff that you say, I wish they had done this, or I'd like to see that?
Well, from a design standpoint, there's certain mistakes that maybe are almost iconic.
Correct.
And so if you take that away, then some of the integrity of reproduction is lost.
Right.
Well, the way I look at it is, I am now responsible for how somebody interprets the past.
As stewards of automotive history, it's critical that we not only get the hands that were instrumental in building the cars that we save, but also the minds that conceive these iconic builds.
I really appreciate what you guys do more than you know.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Newt. Thanks for being here, brother.
One of the most important parts of this restoration is to go with the original true candy apple red that was on it back in the Barris days, and not this maroon color that has been painted for years. Everything's tricky about this paint job from the beginning to the end. Everything uses different components. They have longer dry times. Everything has this little window. And if you don't follow all that, everything can go backwards and sideways like instantly, and then you have to start all over. The color is really important because now I'm responsible for how people perceive history. That's why I don't allow for artistic license or any of that when working on these historic cars. Because ultimately, the way I restore them is probably the way they're gonna live for a really long time. Candy is by far the hardest thing to spray because you're essentially spraying tinted clear. And it takes multiple coats before that color really starts to take on the whole candy apple look. So anything that gathers, one little drop, one little sag, anything, it's over. If I can keep Beau from touching the thing for 2 or 3 days while it dries, everything will be great.
Coming up,
That looks like the star's gold too.
we get a masterwork lesson in gold leafing
It just takes a piece of velvet to scratch it.
and a Hemi in a tow truck. Sounds dangerous.
That's the loudest thing I've ever heard. This might be the most dangerous car in America. This paint is absolutely amazing, man. I mean, there is nothing like candy apple red.
It's so good, it looks like you can take a bite out of it.
Seriously, dude, how long did this take you to paint?
Almost 14 straight hours. And well over 20 layers to get this, so.
That's why it looks so amazing. I mean, you can see into that paint. Painting this wrecker back to its original candy apple red was such a right move. A lot of guys would have tried to put their own stamp on it, but Dave put its history front and center. So what all is Hot Dog gonna do on this now?
So Pete's gonna do the striping, the lettering, all the gold leaf, the murals.
He does the gold leaf too?
Dude, he's one of the best at gold leaf, actually. Well, it'll
Love
be
that
neat
look.
for the actual viewers in TV land
Yeah.
to see how gold leaf is done by hand.
What is happening?
What's up, buddy? So some of this stuff I've sort of got figured out, like this is for sure engine turn leaf. This is just imitation gold with white.
Yeah, and it looks like the star's gold too.
For sure.
There's just a lot of it. This one's cool because it pretty much has a little of everything. It's got cool lettering, some gold leaf, freehand striping, regular brushstroke lettering, and then the little cartoon characters of Red Foxx. I don't use computers for anything. It would be a shame to do that on this car because you got to keep the history going too. The tools that I use has basically been around for 100 years, and it's the same kind of paint. It's got a little soul to it, I think.
It's pretty cool when you think it just takes a piece of velvet to scratch it.
This car is pretty wild, and I would think anybody that was involved with this car at the beginning is just gonna flip their lid when they see it.
So good.
John coming in. There were a couple surprises on this wrecker restoration.
I like these.
The biggest surprise was the whole center steering situation. Heavy. And we had to find a Hemi, but we're finally in the home stretch. We have an engine, sir. Beau secured us a 392 Hemi from Ross Racing Engines that actually matches the original engine. Every time you open a crate, there should be one of those in there. And I'm excited to see this thing become the Little Red Wrecker again, the same way George did it back in 1974.
Holy crud, check out the Moon Eyes gauges.
Let's get this thing
Off
in the
and
air.
Dude, it's one of the best looking engines I've ever seen here, man.
Glad you're here. Don't let this move.
Okay.
As in, yeah. As we come down, we're gonna have to keep rolling the chassis ahead. Yeah, we're really close on headers too. Coming down. That's it. It's in there.
You know, looking at this engine, I really think this would do George proud, man. Oh, yeah. You know, this car never got its 15 minutes of fame, and I think we're bringing it along.
It's definitely gonna be famous now.
I'm really glad that Beau's excited because after all, he's the one that puts the rubber stamp on my paycheck. And I agree that this car is gonna be a huge hit if we can get through these last few issues.
And I don't dig this at all.
Well, we're gonna be very slow and very methodical. But first, we gotta get the cab back mounted on the body. And we gotta do that without screwing up all that bitchin' candy paint.
Dave, be careful.
Get up! Feel like we're pretty good. Seeing the wrecker finally come together with the Hemi engine, the center steering, Hot Dog's amazing leaf work.
So we just gotta come to you just a little bit.
Makes me feel like we're building this Little Red Wrecker all over again back in 1974. Looks like we're about 6 inches off the pins. And why George wanted it to represent one of TV's most beloved sitcoms. Come down a little bit on your side, even it out. And going through all the steps to make this thing perfect, to finally let this thing have its time, makes everything worth it.
The valve cover on your side is really close.
Yikes, how close? Because we gotta go back.
You want me to roll the chassis forward a little?
Hold on. My pin's in. Go ahead and put your pin in.
I'm in all the way.
Bueno. Well, it's in there. Barely. Literally could not be any closer to this valve cover. But we still haven't heard this thing run. And as far as finishing touches go, good job. That's sort of a big one. Let's get that box wired up and fire this bitch.
Absolutely.
What is this? 18. Do you have any 16 gauge pink?
I have whatever's on that cart.
Right now I'm wiring up the fuel pump, ignition coil, distributor, the starter, the alternator, the hydraulic pump, and then we'll start it up.
This thing's gonna be insane. It looks absolutely ridiculous. I can't wait to see this thing fire up soon. It's so much motor in this tiny little truck. There's no way Beau's ever gonna drive it.
Did I hear the wrecker's ready to fire up?
What the are you doing? I'm giving an interview.
Let's go fire it up.
Interview?
I can wait for a second. Let's hear this
I
thing.
guess we're gonna go fire this up. So I don't know where we ended up. It started out at 392 cubic inches. It's well over 400 now. It's been bored, it's been stroked. Everything's balanced. 671, supercharger, BDS, overdriven, 2,750 carbs. It's making north of 900 horsepower on something that weighs less than 2,000 pounds.
All day.
Can I trust you to turn the key and
Do I
not
get
kill
to
us?
do the honors?
Let me make sure we're in park.
right.
Yep.
Ready?
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Woo! That was invigorating.
That was insane, man. That's the loudest thing I've ever heard.
I tend to overdo things a little bit, and we might have overdone it a little too much. We'll see.
This might be the most dangerous car in America right now.
By far the most obnoxious.
I love it.
We're really close now. All the really hard stuff is behind us. Now it's just a matter of throwing all the last bits together. You come down about 3 more inches and I'll pull you back. The bed. the saddle mount fuel tanks. All the pieces that we had re-chromed, including those ridiculously heavy pieces for the towing assembly. The places where George Barris really left his mark, in the details. That's where he really earned his status as the king of the customizers. And that's why we're so excited for the event where we finally unveil this thing to the world. Yes.
Coming up,
The vehicle of the future.
one of automotive history's most infamous vehicles takes flight. And
That's so cool.
our Little Red Wrecker gets its 15 minutes of fame.
Guys, check it out. It is the Little Red Wrecker from Sanford and Son.
When I was a kid in the 1970s, we shot a video of this very car. Why? Because this is the Mizar, better known as the Flying Pinto.
The vehicle of the future.
The idea of a car that can transform into an airplane has seemingly been perpetually 2 years away. In 1971, engineers Henry Smolinski and Harold Blake began work on what they hoped would be the first commercially available roadable aircraft. They chose a Pinto because, for its day, it was very lightweight and aerodynamic. They took a Cessna Skymaster rear end and married it to detachable wings. The idea was you could drive to the airport, attach the wings, fly to your destination, take the wings off, and you've got a car. It doesn't just sound like something out of James Bond, it actually inspired a car in a Bond film. Unfortunately, despite several successful flights, the two pioneers of this incredible idea were tragically killed in a crash and the project was abandoned. Which is why the concept of flying cars still remains 2 years away. Forever. That's so cool. It's very surreal right now. But Hollywood can be deceiving. Here in Tinseltown, the trick to filming with picture cars is to have a process trailer do all the work. Watch this. Hey editors, turn off the engine sound effects. See? A process trailer is often used in filming so that you can concentrate on your lines, cam work, and audio instead of the road. I have a real appreciation for picture vehicles. In fact, one of my first jobs at age 16 was delivering picture cars all around the city. They hold such a special place in all of our hearts and have been a tremendously influential part of car culture. From KITT to the Batmobile, the Munsters coach, and who can forget the Flying DeLorean? In the golden age of Hollywood, they turned to one man to build their scene-stealing cars, George Barris. His creations were truly unique and often groundbreaking, and this truck, the Little Red Wrecker, is no exception. He wanted this to be the next great picture car for NBC's Sanford and Son. But it never happened. Producers canceled the show before this incredibly unique picture car made its television debut. And it was instead lost to obscurity for 40 years. That's why we jumped at the chance to resurrect this creation for his daughter, Joji. Centering the steering column back to its original design was crucial in restoring this car's history.
According to the pictures, it's dead on.
The paint on this truck really does this Barris creation justice. Dave and Hot Dog pulled out all the stops. There is nothing like candy apple red. And the results speak for themselves. We had to put the same behemoth engine back in the Wrecker, which made it impossible to drive safely through Hollywood. Which is the big reason we're using this process trailer. Making 1,000 horsepower, I think it's safe to say that this is the most powerful tow truck in the world. And to give new life to the electrical system, Mad Mike rewired the entire Wrecker. I gotta say, I'm absolutely blown away with what a phenomenal job Dave, Mike, and the whole crew did on this build. I mean, from the engine to the chrome to the paint and interior, I'll bet George is looking down and smiling on us right now.
There is always something happening out here in Hollywood. Looks like we got a little live filming coming up on the left-hand side here, guys. Take a look. Check it out. It is the Little Red Wrecker from Sanford and Son. The Little Red Wrecker from Sanford and Son. Are you famous, Hollywood? The Little Red Wrecker on Hollywood Boulevard.
I guess it's a hit in Hollywood. And without further ado, it's Little Red Wrecker's turn for the ultimate Hollywood spotlight. Tonight, this historic truck will finally get its little red carpet and its 15 minutes of fame. Come on, gather around, everyone. We got something really cool and special we want to show. Thank you all for being here on this really special night to show you guys a really special car, but more importantly, to honor a really special man. And that's George Barris.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, if it wasn't for George, I might not be here tonight doing what I'm doing. So I'm incredibly grateful. And I'm incredibly grateful to Joe G. Thanks so much for giving us the opportunity to restore this car back to its former glory, and also give this car its 15 minutes of fame, right alongside these other famous Hollywood show cars that I'm sure most of you recognize. So, without further ado, are you ready to see it? Yeah! All right. Dave, where you at, man?
Oh my God, even the
You're gonna cry, aren't you?
I swear I am. This is amazing. I mean, I saw what it was, and this can't be. I mean, it's every detail, even the lettering. I'm just so honored and happy to be involved with this crew. This is mind-blowing. The people that care about it and want to keep his legacy going.
That's great. Fabulous.
They honored my father and exposed the history, and it's just exciting. Thank you so much. I am so happy.
Thank you. That went well, right?
Yeah, that was super cool. Joji was super happy. I think she cried a little.
She did cry. That was really sweet. You should really put your mask on. You know we're filming a show, right?
I actually am reveling in the fact that I can actually see where I'm going for once.
Dave, you're a terrible superhero.